Over 30 competitors will be in Sydney for the National Championships, and it will span 3 divisions from open to beginners. Jared Webb of Belmont, the number 2 ranked skimboarder in Australia, will lead a Newcastle team of 3, which includes Michael Bradiker of Merriweather and Shane Davis of Hamilton South. It's a sport that hasn't really grabbed the imagination of the Aussie public as yet, but it's felt that with more competition, a new summer sport will be created, and that soon we will be able to take on the Americans in what has become a favourite pastime.
I'd like to think that we've got half a dozen guys that could compete fairly competitively over there, and hopefully within a few years we'll be able to give the Americans a run for their money and maybe take the title away from the Americans of being the number 1 in skimboarding.
And if confidence has anything to do with winning championships, the Newcastle contingent is in with a real chance at Bronte.
I'd like to win the Open and take out the overall title, and we've got Shane Davis from Newcastle, who was a member of the team that did a demonstration at Surfest a few years ago. He looks like going fairly well in the intermediate. Michael Bradiker, who is ranked 7th in Australia, will be looking to take out the intermediate title, but I guess it'll be a pretty tight tussle between Michael and Shane in the intermediate final.
That was a catch cry at Singleton Showground today as cattle of just about every shape, size and breed gathered, so it wasn't a surprise to see the prize beasts receiving red carpet treatment, though for the dairy cows it was still business as usual. Life on the show circuit for a prize cow or bull can start virtually from day one, though for some of the younger brigade today, the prospect of becoming a star of the show ring wasn't all that inviting. For others, though, it was something to moo about, much to the embarrassment of their handlers. The dairying section has a tradition of being particularly strong at Singleton, and this year was no exception, and it seemed nothing went unnoticed. Aside from the usual collection of best of age and breed classes, there was also sections for the best udder. Imagine having to pick a winner from this lot. In the end, a 3-year-old Holstein by the name of Ladino Park Commissioner Gypsy creamed all the opposition to be declared the Supreme Champion All-Breed Dairy Cow and Supreme Champion Udder. The feature breed this year, however, was the Pole Hereford, and that ring attracted a horde of spectators as beast after magnificent beast went under the eye of renowned cattle judge Roger Hann. The coveted Grand Champion Bull Award went to the awesome 2-year-old bull Bronwyn Endeavour, weighing in at 1,000 kilograms and with a service fee of $350. Well, at Easter time at the Sydney show, this bull sold in the sale ring for $10,000, but now after his success here today, he's probably worth about twice that. But the rewards aren't saved all for his owners. Tomorrow, he's to go out into the paddock for his first season as a sire, and his owners will be hoping he works half as good as he looks. The search for the Grand Champion Pole Hereford exhibit turned out to be a bit of a David and Goliath affair. Big Endeavour Bronwyn pitted against a tiny heifer by the name of Lady Di, and the result was a real boil-over, the tiny heifer being given the nod because, according to Roger Hann, she was one of the most magnificent beasts he'd ever seen.
The police military band led the youth club members as they marched down Hunter Street. Behind them, the Newcastle Police Youth Club, one of the first to be established in New South Wales. In an unprecedented move, organisers decided to hold this year's march in Newcastle to mark the local club's 50th anniversary. Amongst the 51 clubs, members from as far afield as Broken Hill, Dubbo and Moree. Musicians, gymnasts and marching girls were amongst the assortment of youngsters making their way to the town hall. There, VIPs took the salute.
A 3-day coaching clinic conducted by the New South Wales Bowling Association is the first step in taking Australia to the forefront of international competition. Talent scouts invited the best bowlers from the Newcastle region to take part in this experiment which, if successful, will change the face of the sport. The campaign is the brainchild of Australian selector Barry Salter, who believes the long-term approach adopted by the association will reap benefits.
It's going to take probably 10 years. What it'll do, it will push the people that are already at top level higher. This is what coaching, in my opinion, is all about in a club. If it doesn't exist, the people amble along and improve by their own standards. If there's someone there to push someone else, the higher grade players must play better to retain their position. And that's what coaching and grading is about, and that's what will happen. I think before the younger players reach maturity, they'll push the higher grade level player up a little bit higher than they already are.
Using videos to analyse the style of each bowler, coaches are able to pick up mistakes and correct them.
First off, you've got to explain what you're there for and what we're going to try and teach them. It makes it a little bit easier in this respect that when we arrive, we put those kids on the video. We don't ask them any questions, we don't look at their bowling, we just video them on there, then we go back inside and we pick out their faults. They can see their own faults, and that makes it a lot easier on us. And when that is all over, we say, now you've got a lot of faults, so and so and so, and then I said it's up to us now to correct those faults.
Even though bowls is traditionally the domain of the older set, the confidence of the bowlers at the coaching clinic certainly doesn't need any developing.
I wouldn't mind being a professional bowler, playing against Barry Salter.
Race 5 was the ladyship pace over 2,110 metres and had been incident-free until the horses entered the back straight. Pearl Dancers started to tire and Gold Doubloon along with Flighty Thor were tightened for room. At this stage, just off-screen to the right, Cheryl Atkins' whip came in contact with Tracy Gallagher, who retaliated by striking Atkins a number of times.
The whip was in about that position, which meant that when I got a bit of a bump, it spun around sideways and it contacted Tracy. She said it hit her in the chest. I don't disbelieve that it hit her in the chest. She said it hit her. But there was no deliberate action whatsoever.
At the inquiry after the race, Atkins stated that her whip had slipped from her grasp and Gallagher said she felt that she had been struck deliberately and had retaliated. The stewards were in no doubt. After giving all matters consideration, the stewards charged both drivers pursuant to Rule 370A, which relates to foul or improper acts during the progress of any race, to which T. Gallagher pleaded guilty and C. Atkins not guilty. After hearing further evidence, C. Atkins was found in breach of the rule. The stewards suspended the driving licences of C. Atkins for a period of 6 months and T. Gallagher for a period of 12 weeks. And on hearing the length of sentence, Cheryl Atkins was stunned.
Utter disbelief, I tell you. I couldn't believe it. 6 months for doing nothing. Something that was quite accidental, I still can't believe it.
Cheryl will appeal to the New South Wales Harness Racing Association and is unsure how her chances will be.
It's only my word against the stewards at the time. Whether the judge considers it to be a feasible explanation that that's what did or may have happened and accepts it as that, I couldn't honestly say.
Newcastle Council wants to make Civic Park safer, attractive and a fitting place to hold official civic ceremonies. Consultants were asked to draft a management plan for the park, but their recommendations have sparked widespread concern amongst ex-service organisations. The veterans' fears centre on a recommendation to relocate the park's memorials to a specially designated War Memorial Park. The consultants suggest that memorials like this pine, grown from a seed brought from Gallipoli, be removed with a replacement planted elsewhere. The idea is to establish an uncluttered formal axis between the City Hall and the Cultural Centre. But veterans are horrified.
We feel that this is part of our heritage. These are dedicated monuments to our people who gave their lives in all conflicts, and we feel that they should be left alone.
The Lord Mayor insists Council will not go ahead with the consultant's recommendations on the memorials without full consultation with ex-service personnel. He does, however, favour a more ordered approach to the park.
We have quite a number of memorials, both from war memorials, memorials of battles, memorials of groups who took part in the major wars. We've also got things that have been planted by the likes of Rotary, Lions, Apex clubs and so on. They're all in the park, but the fact of the matter is for the last 50 years they've been put in an unplanned way, and we need to get that back into order so there's some structure about the park.
It's expected Council will tonight steer clear of the sensitive issue of the war memorials, concentrating instead on less contentious security and amenity initiatives. Until a verdict is reached, the veterans will continue to wage their battle to protect Civic Park's memorials.
We think it's a beautiful park. The environment, as far as we can see, can be improved upon, but don't interfere with the war memorials. They're part and parcel of Civic Park and have been for years.
The building's trades groups have downed tools on most sites for the last 3 Tuesday afternoons. The dispute arose after the unions called on employers for $20 a week towards a type of superannuation fund to go to a worker if he or she loses their job and cannot get another. However, the Newcastle Master Builders Association said the scheme was simply severance pay and suggested an alternative paid only after 12 months of work on a scaled rate tapering down after 4 years. That received a flat no from the unions. 600 workers had initially voted for the stoppages, but at a union meeting today, only 80 attended. They voted to cease strike action until a decision was made by the Australian Arbitration Commission on the redundancy payments, expected in the next 2 weeks. Following that decision, the building workers' unions will then discuss the implications with the Newcastle Master Builders Association.
The moratorium only lasts to that period of time, and if there's unsuccessful negotiations then, the meeting today determined that another mass meeting should be called and probably a much stronger campaign next time.
Marceau is the master of mime and is acclaimed throughout the world for his silent art.
Like the word theatre, it has a technique on its own. It has to create magic, to make the invisible visible, to create through space, to sculpt space. It speaks also to the imagination of the public, you know. You see what is not there, you know, when I lean against a mantelpiece, or when I have walls, or when I open a door, or when I'm an angel, or when I'm flying, hunting a butterfly, you know, or a crocodile maybe.
At 66 years of age, this is perhaps the last time Marcel will tour Australia. During this visit, he has not performed in Sydney and will appear only tonight in Newcastle. Marcel has been dubbed the greatest mime since Charlie Chaplin and is most famous for his alter ego character Mr. Bip, who will feature in tonight's performance.
Bip is the alter ego I've created in '47 and with whom I've travelled all the 5 continents. And I've travelled all around the world, in China, in India, in Africa, in South America, every year in North America. And it's my 7th tour. You will not believe it, but it's my 7th tour in Australia.
This is a sight sheep producers dread. The pronounced limp probably means foot rot, and if one has it, almost certainly the whole mob is infected. Footrot is no stranger to the Upper Hunter, but this year it's reaching epidemic proportions. The disease thrives in damp conditions, and this year's big wet created a freeway for infection.
This is the worst we've had it in the last 15 or 16 years. We usually only get about 1 or 2 properties with Footrot a year.
There is such a stigma attached to Footrot that the manager of this property would agree to talk to us only if he wasn't identified. He bought his infected sheep at a sale after carefully checking their health.
There was nothing lame and nothing showed up until the wet set in this year, and there was firstly sort of started off as a few being lame, and then now there's probably 50-60% of the sheep lame.
The Footrot is a truly insidious disease because it's so hard to detect in the early stages and it spreads so easily. Even after these sheep are gone, the ground that they've walked on will remain infected for up to a week. Anyone not suspecting that could easily bring another mob through here and pass the disease on without even knowing it. And that's been happening all over the state. The Hunter is one of several Footrot protection zones in New South Wales where moving infected animals is an offence. As a vet with the Pastures Protection Board, it's John Entwistle's job to enforce the rules. He's so far quarantined 18 properties containing 20,000 sheep and goats.
3 feet on this one. We'll hack into these a bit.
It's pretty bad here, it's not fly blown as yet.
Working on sheep to clear their feed is not for those with a weak stomach, but for the owner the economic implications can be even uglier. With mutton prices down, it's not worth the time it takes to treat a flock. Most will be sent for slaughter. There they'll bring perhaps 1/3 of the price they should. Rosshampton, NBN News.
More than 300 paintings and sketches in 5 categories are trying to win a total of $3,000 in cash prizes. The artworks are considered to be good investments by the companies providing the cash, who in exchange will own the winning paintings. Categories include oils and watercolours, as well as an open category for the coveted $1,000 prize. Some regular entrants include Lemon Tree Passage artist Elizabeth Baxter with her painting The Ultimate Animal. A talented newcomer is Wayne Phillip with A Country Road. Organisers today made a final inspection of the exhibition, ready for tonight's announcement of the winner at 8:30.
Ian MacDonald left his hometown of Andover, England in July 1984. Since then, he's undertaken a journey that has led him 21,000 kilometres across Britain, France, West Germany, Austria, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Iran, Pakistan, Japan and now Northern Australia. It's been a remarkable exhibition of stamina and dedication, though for Ian it means much more than that. He sees it as his own personal crusade.
Well, my mother and father died of cancer, and I wanted to do something for cancer research. And some years ago, we decided to try and now do something, and that was back in 1982. In 1984, we actually started on this run, which began in the town of England of Andover, 5 years ago now.
Ian says every country he's passed through has provided its tough times, but he believes his arrival in Australia was probably the hardest part of his whole journey.
I remember the first time I went out on my acclimatise and arriving in Darwin. I went out for a short run, but lasted 6 minutes and collapsed. And at that point I realised it was going to be totally different to anything I'd experienced in any other part of the world.
But even the Aussie heat couldn't compare with what awaited him in Iran.
They had 4 sheep, and as I ran into the city, at every intersection they pulled out one of the sheep from the ute, and as we ran up I had to run through the blood, because what they did, they slit its throat, and apparently it's supposed to be good luck for me on my run. I couldn't help thinking it wasn't much fun for the sheep, like, you know.
Ian, accompanied by several local runners, ran into Newcastle for a mayoral reception this morning. From here, he'll continue south to Tasmania, then it's on to New Zealand and then the United States. By the time he finishes in about 16 months, he hopes to have raised $3 million. So far, his kitty boasts almost $200,000.
Wallsend are in a little strife against Waratah and will be hoping for the tail to wag for quite a while. Cardiff will resume at 1 for 6 in their match with Belmont. Charlestown are in a good position to get the points against Southern Lakes. University are chasing an outright victory against Merewether. City are in an excellent position in their match against Stockton, and Lambton New Lambton will have it all to do against Ham Wicks. 2 representative matches will be played in the city and suburban competition this weekend, with Newcastle playing Muswellbrook in the All Age and the Colts.
They don't just hurt you personally, they hurt everything around you. Everything around you they hurt, and the foundations of any family are never the same. And look at my son Guy, he's left home. My son Dean, he's left home. There's only Troy here. And I believe that this was a result of this case. None of us have gone untouched. We've all been injured one way or another with it, you know. And we're lucky enough to be training as we are. And I can't understand how Troy's managed to keep up the peak of his training for a world title fight under this pressure.
Senator Richardson met with landholders who will be flooded out by the proposed Telegraph Dam. After 40 years of uncertainty, 3,000 hectares are now marked to go under to meet urban and industrial water needs in the next century. A 6-month review has been undertaken by the State Environment Minister Tim Moore. However, the Telegraph site is the preferred option. Senator Richardson, who concedes there are votes in this issue, canned the state government for its approach to environmental matters.
It's indicative of looking at those who care and those who don't. And I'd suggest to you the Greiner government's record of care is so far severely lacking.
However, on the Telegraph issue, the minister said there was little he could do as it was a state matter. Senator Richardson said he hoped the agricultural land could be saved and said he sympathised with the 30 affected farmers who could lose their livelihood and their homes. This house is 135 years old and on and off for the last 40 years its very existence has been threatened. If the dam goes in, the veranda on which I'm standing will be 15 metres underwater. Generations of family history will be lost.
There are people who've lived here for generations. They're part of the land. So when it drowns, so do they.
The Synod is the annual meeting of local clergy, laymen and women discussing issues affecting and relating to the church. 67 parishes in the Newcastle diocese were represented. The Bishop of Newcastle, the Right Reverend Alfred Holland, in his presidential speech predicted a Christian revival over the next 10 years. In planning for the future, he said the church should be aware of issues such as green politics and the growing threat of AIDS. At the meeting, the future of the marriage ceremony was also discussed, where it was suggested lifelong commitments will continue to be replaced by short-term relationships. Telecom workers were called at 10:30 this morning after the contract bulldozer working for Maitland Council caught the lines while levelling a block opposite the Green Hill Shopping Centre. 2 large cables were cut, one which can only be replaced by spares in Sydney. Medford, Medford Meadows, Green Hills and Ashtonfield are the areas affected. Telecom expects a quarter of the 2,000 services to be restored tonight. However, the complete job won't be finished for probably 2 days. With men working on 24-hour shifts, it's not a cheap exercise. Who's going to pay for this?
Either the contractor or the Maitland City Council.
And what sort of money are we talking about?
In excess of $10,000.